only have been performed in the name of God or under divine instruction, no one has any hesitation in recognizing or identifying one. Now, as long as this remains the case, it is they who have to do the explaining, they who owe the accounting, they who owe the apology, and not us, and we must be plain on it. I have a third challenge, which is to those who say the president is one of them, that in these matters that can't yet quite be decided, of where we come from, our cosmos, our species, we should teach the argument. We should have equal time. The president is too stupid to know that there isn't really an argument about this anymore. There used to be one, and when there was, when people weren't quite certain, the line of the churches was that the teaching of evolution and of Darwinism should be banned altogether. They didn't want equal time then. Notice the slippage of their gears. When they were strong enough to try and ban it, that's what they wanted to do. Now they're not strong enough, they come up with a weedy, feeble, ingratiating whine of, well, equal time, fair dues, open-mindedness, and so on, as if there really was a disagreement about this. All right, let's see if we can accommodate them. I learned about Darwin by studying, actually, the debate between Bishop Huxley and, Bishop Wilberforce and Thomas Huxley at Oxford. I mean, that is a classic debate. That's how I learned about it. I wasn't taught it in science class. I was taught it in history class. That's how I learned. I've learned since, as you have, about the debate between Clarence Darrow and William Jennings Bryan, the idol of all morondom, as H.L. Mencken called him, in Dayton, Tennessee. I learned about that in history and literature class, not in biology class. Keep it out of there, because otherwise we'll be having people saying, well, children, chemistry period is over, but we'll be doing alchemy in the next half. And put away your astronomy books and get out your astrology charts, because we are open-minded in this school, and other stultifying nonsense that you wouldn't even get in a madrasa, I shouldn't think. But if we're to accept the principle, then let us say to the president and his friends, by all means equal time. Any church that is tax exempt, therefore, any religious group that gets a break from the IRS, any church that's in receipt of any monies at all from the so-called faith-based initiative must give 50% of its time to the teaching of evolution by natural selection. You might take that back to your communities and tell them to suck on that and see if they like it. Because that's what they seem to be asking, but are too stupid to realize. You see, off the defensive again, we're not resisting them. We're on their trail now. We've got their number. We're on their track. They're the ones who should be scared of us. Don't you think it's about time? I do. Now, because religion was the... someone will tell me when I'm trespassing on our time together, won't they? Will you, Annie Laurie? Will you let me know? I mean, my impression is that people come to events like this, especially people like you, for the chance to speak as well as to listen. And we are supposed to have some time. It's yours. Shall I just bang on till they tell me to stop? Okay. But I wouldn't mind a light of some... So I don't want to skip our Q&A. Q&A sounds patronizing. At the time which belongs to us, okay? And then I will stop being this nice and I'll only talk to someone who has a receipt. Preferably from an independent bookstore. Because this is America after all, and I didn't sign up for nothing. Okay. The first and I have another challenge. This is my fourth one. We have religion in our midst, and it's even in our minds. We know where it comes from. For an excellent reason. Religion is the first, and therefore, in some ways, therefore, the worst of our attempts to explain human nature and the natural order. It was our first attempt at philosophy, just as it was our first attempt at astronomy and at biology. We embarked on it in a time of fearful infancy, when we didn't know that we lived on a rounded planet in a tiny solar system which had a center around which we revolved. It didn't revolve around us. Religion used to preach the contrary. We didn't know that there were microorganisms that we couldn't see, but that explained a lot about both our health and our unhealth, ill health. We were told we were given dominions over all animals, and we were wrong, because there were no dinosaurs in that list, no marsupials, because the people who wrote this didn't know they existed, and we were certainly never given dominion over microorganisms, and we'll never get that, because they rule. Good for the gut, sometimes bad for other things, permanently our most, sort of, as it were, highly evolved rivals. We were baffled by climatic and cataclysmic events, earthquakes, tidal waves, storms, lightning. All of this was to us terrifying. Okay, religion worked as an attempt then to make sense of things. We are pattern-seeking mammals, after all. It's a good thing that we are, because if we weren't pattern-seeking mammals, our curiosity would have no outlet, and we wouldn't be capable of the great innovations that have liberated us from so many things, including religion. And it's argued by some, well, then, give it some credit. The late Stephen Jay Gould said, let's consider religion in one corner and the study of science and reason in another, and consider them non-overlapping magisteria. One does one does the other. There's no need for a conflict. I think this has become, especially with the extraordinary revolution that we've been through in the last 20 years or so in the human and natural sciences, with the work of Richard Dawkins, Stephen Weinberg, Daniel Dennett, Carl Sagan. I hope I'm not leaving anyone out. I'm sure I am. Stephen Hawking, of course, many others, that we've come to the point where we have to say no. This stuff is incompatible with, in fact, I prefer to say irreconcilable with, reasoned acquisition of knowledge and reasoned deployment of it. And I think I've found a way, I'm a non-scientist who's profited a lot from studying this discussion, of putting it to a lay audience in such a way as it can be clearly understood. And if you like, I'll share it with you. Would you like me to share? Sharing is such a lovely word, isn't it? Well, it's this. I've taken the best evidence that I can, most recently, the night before last, in Georgetown, from Francis Collins, who, as you know, completed the Human Genome Project, but who believes himself to be the object of a divine design, and was very impressed once when hiking to find a frozen waterfall that went into 3 parts, the Trinity, and knelt down at that very moment and gave himself, he says, to Jesus, though I don't see what Jesus has to do with the freezing of the waterfalls, but it could have been Muhammad, it could have been Krishna. He chose the Nazarene, and who therefore demonstrates that for many people it is possible to hold apparently irreconcilable ideas in the head at the same time, and who is a man I was very proud to have met, honored to have even been discussing with. Very well, I asked him, how long, Doctor, do you believe the human species Homo sapiens, after our brief encounters with the Cro-Magnons and the Neanderthals and so on, have been autonomous as Homo sapiens on the Earth? He said, I've heard from Carl Sagan and Richard Dawkins, maybe it's as long as 200, maybe 240 or 50,000 years, or as low as, and he said, as low as 100,000. Could only be 100,000. I said, okay. I'm Jewish on my mother's side. I'll take 100. 100,000 years then. That's all I need for this experiment. 100,000 years, ladies and gentlemen, of our species. Born. Probably dying a lot, well, evidently dying a lot in childbirth and killing its mothers by doing so. But managing to get born. Living, life expectancy for the first 15,000 years is probably not more than about 20, 25. Dying of microorganisms we didn't know were there. Dying of our teeth, which were suspiciously too near our brain for when they rotted or became infected. Terrified by earthquakes, lightning, floods, famines, inexplicable cataclysmic events, fighting one another for sex, for food, for shelter, for territory, all of that. Any of you can fill in this bit for yourself, this trope. Have a rough picture of what it was like, but slow, it's true, and gradual, and much backsliding, but a sort of upward progression to where we are approximately now. 4, 50, 60, 70, 80, add on, think of the wars now, think of the famines, think of the rapes, think of the gods they had, Think of the bears they worshipped and made skulls, bear skulls they made into totems. Think of the waterfalls they thought were magic. Think of the rocks they thought were special. Think of all this. They weren't without God. Believe you me, none of them were. But that didn't count. Didn't count at all. Because heaven watched this. Like that. All that suffering, death, disease, murder, miseries, famine, with folded arms and indifference until 98,000 years had gone by. And said, now it may be time to intervene. And the best place to do it, and the best place to conduct this intervention would not be China, where people can read and make gunpowder, but in sort of Bronze Age Palestine would be a good place to implant the idea by human sacrifice. Of course, we always do that, and then see if the news can spread in pure form by way